to Covington, but also extend a very strong thanks to Jose Antonio Rivas, to Ian Laird, Maria Matamala, and the whole strategy team for all of their efforts in coordinating this week's events. And we're delighted to be participating in this 5th edition of Washington Arbitration Week. This particular event is the 4th annual collaboration between Washington Arbitration Week and Arbitral Women. And as a member of the board, I'm very thrilled that we have kept this collaboration alive for the past several years. We have been pleased to partner with Washington Arbitration Week each year to feature an all-female panel of speakers on cutting-edge substantive topics. For those of you not familiar, Arbitral Women is a globally recognized organization. It's a professional networking organization for the advancement of women and the promotion of female practitioners in international arbitration. And for the past 30 years, Arbitral Women has promoted, supported, and celebrated women in ADR through a variety of initiatives. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Jose Antonio Rivas, who will introduce our panel. And I did mention, but just once more, I'd like to put the, just to re-emphasize the fact that this event, we're very proud to co-sponsor it with the Equal Representation for Expert Witnesses, along with Arbitral Women and Covington. So thank you so much for joining us.
Okay. Well, thank you, to especially Covington for having us, and for organizing this luncheon, and also to the Pledge for Equal Representation, and of course, thank you to Arbitral Women. This is our 3rd panel of the day, and I'm thrilled to be on a Monday in Washington D.C. after Thanksgiving, in parallel to ICC arbitration in Miami, with a full house and in like very, very cold weather. So this is a testament of Washington Arbitration Week having an international arbitration community. So with that, I would like to introduce, apart from thanking Marnie and Shireen and also Clovis, I would like to introduce Clovis. And before doing that, I would also like to say that that Covington has been really a partner of Washington Arbitration Week from its inception, and so has been Arbitral Women. So we're very lucky to have partners and associates and women in our arbitration community, such as you. So I really commend you for supporting Washington Arbitration Week, because we are really building a community in many respects. So with that, this panel will simply say that in our process of research on what to bring to the floor in Washington Arbitration Week, one of the things that we had been talking with Arbitral Women for months and years was to make a difference, not only in terms of putting on the floor an issue related to gender equality that would be related to international arbitration, but something that substantively would make a difference. And I think that this is sort of the panel that was obvious, especially because the truth is you had already done the work because there was a prior publication on this very topic before. So it was very easy to identify and just put it on the floor. With that, I would like to introduce Clovis, and Clovis represents clients in the resolution of high stakes cutting edge disputes before international courts and tribunals. And of course, she is a partner at Covington. Her practice focuses on public international law and international commercial arbitration and investment arbitration across broad range of industries. I can say many things, but one of the things that really impressed me from the beginning was her knowledge and actually experience, even when she was an associate, um, on international arbitration, but also related to human rights disputes. And I mean, that's something that very few international arbitration, commercial arbitration experts have, and Clovis has that. So with that, Clovis, please take the floor.
Thank you, Jose Antonio, for that kind introduction, and to the team, strategy team, for organizing this event. I'm very pleased to see you here, especially like Jose Antonio said, the Monday after Thanksgiving. With that, our panel today is titled, as you know, Expert Witnesses and Gender Equality, the Evolving Landscape. We are going to explore how the landscape of expert testimony is changing in terms of gender equality and which steps can be taken to promote fairness and inclusiveness in that field. And with that, I'd like to introduce our speakers today. We have a panel that is very wealthy in knowledge and experience on this topic. And to my left is Julie Seitz. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. Julie is Senior Managing Director at FTI. She has over 25 years of experience in forensic accounting and financial analysis in multiple industries, such as insurance, technology, financial services, and luxury goods. She has testified before federal and state courts, as well as multiple arbitral tribunals. Sitting next to her, we have Tyler Curry. She's a director at HKA's Forensic Accounting and Commercial Disputes Practice with over 15 years of experience in financial advisory and consulting for forensic accounting investigations and complex disputes, including arbitrations under ICSID, ICC, and UNCITRAL rules. Next, we have Jamie Hager-Baumer. She's an associate with Brattle, and she focuses on valuation, quantum, and regulatory issues. Jamie works with Fortune 500 companies, law firms, and government agencies across multiple industries, such as oil and gas, electricity, mining, and securities. And last but not least, we have Julie Carey. She's a senior managing director at NERA, and she's also an adjunct professor at Georgetown, where she teaches energy economics. She has over 25 years of experience in energy-related disputes and has testified in US courts and before ICSID, LCIA, and ICC tribunals. Thank you so much for joining us. It's such a pleasure. And with that, let's open the discussion. Just to begin, could each of you just briefly share your experience in the expert testimony field and how gender has shaped your role in that space?
Are we going to add the line?
Up to you, Julie.
Okay, so my experience started about 18 years ago. I was pregnant with one of my kids the first time I testified in an arbitration that actually helped me. And that's a different story. But I don't think gender has necessarily shaped my experience as an expert witness because I worked for males, but in a very, very supportive practices. And I never saw gender as something holding me back necessarily. And maybe I was kind of blind to it. Maybe there were opportunities I wasn't getting. When I started testifying as a female, there was one thing we talked about in our prep call is it was harder to get that first opportunity when you're in your early 30s and you look young. I looked very young back then. And so.
And you still do.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's getting harder to pull off what my age is, but I think I just didn't see it as a barrier. Now, as I've gotten further along in my career, I do notice certain microaggressions. I do notice certain things from people who aren't as aware. and it may be billing issues where I'll be treated a certain way that I don't think a male counterpart would be treated. But in terms of my expert work, I was supporting experts, writing the reports, doing the analysis, and I just thought, well, why can't I testify too? And I had the personality to want to do it, just did it. So I don't know that it's necessarily, my gender's necessarily shaped my path as an expert.
Any thoughts, different experiences?
To build upon that, I also feel that gender has not really defined my progress here. I've also been a supporting role in helping with testifying experts, doing the analyses, writing the reports, and doing the prep work leading up into the arbitrations, both for counsel and for the testifying expert themselves. But I would say more gender related is my journey into motherhood. I work with a lot of males, but I work with a very supportive group. So it's not where I've had microaggressions against me, but more of the internal pressure that I put upon myself to make sure that I am looking comparable to single men, married men, whichever, but that it's not holding me back. It's not a penalty. And that, I can manage my time and just make sure that it's an asset to the firm. And they realize that versus just knowing that it's just me. So that's what I would say for mine.
Thank you. Any further thoughts?
I would like to echo some of the things that Tyler said. I don't think being a woman has held me back in the industry. I think probably being a mother has been one of the harder things I've had to deal with. Although, being a mom is amazing. I have had a slower career progression of being a parent by my own choice. I'm grateful to have colleagues in a company that do support me and have allowed me to progress at a slower pace. But as Tyler was saying, sometimes it's difficult to look around and see other colleagues who progress so much more quickly because they haven't made the same choices. Or similarly, I always wonder, what do my colleagues think of me? Do they think I'm not serious? Does my client think I'm not serious? I think that being a mother has made me a better consultant. As a project manager, I am amazing because no one can juggle like a mom. I also feel like I have a lot more compassion for my clients now. What my clients are going through is serious and important. And I think it can be more sensitive to the issues that they're undergoing. So just tackling all of these things is hard for women. And I appreciate my firm and my colleagues around me who've been so supportive along the way.
Thank you.
Great. And I guess from my experience, which started, I'll say it a long time ago where things looked very different. I commented to the group when we had one of our meetings that where I grew up as a consultant, there were nothing but male bosses and nothing but male clients and nothing but male lawyers in the rooms that I was in. And it was daunting. I'm not, I'm fearless in many ways. It didn't stop me, but it made me very thoughtful of how I approach my career, knowing that there are no models for having a family that was not negotiable. If you asked me my chance of success, I would have said 50-50. Okay, 50-50. But I learned from the men that you must take risks and use everything you have from your strategic advantage of an organization earlier so that you can take the time when you want to. And you can, so my approach was to get out faster and more furious and see where chips fell where they might. And I look back with great appreciation for the successes I've had, more than I could have ever expected. And ultimately to see diversity in the rooms more today than before. So even having this discussion is success from my perspective. So I start with gratitude, but I also am keenly of the view that I need to contribute more to the development of others. So I spend time, it's more in the day-to-day with who I work with, but I want to give back. I want people to have an easier time than me. That's my goal. That's imperative from my perspective. And so it's not from, did I get the expert work or not? That the work is the work. But the two lessons are risk-taking, strategic risk-taking, that I think women are a little bit less more hesitant than men. I mean, I literally learned from the men. Sat there where they put their hand up first. You're the only one there. I'm like, I know that better than you. So my message to women is to take risks and to try to use your strengths as an advantage down the road. And you know, I'm happy for the opportunity to be able to help others and where they are in their career, and that's very rewarding for me. You know, trying to address challenges as we go.
Thank you. There is no hiding that expert witnesses are mostly male. I think maybe I have seen 2 female expert witnesses testifying in my career, maybe in the past 10 years. What, in your view, has led to that imbalance?
To Clovis's, sorry, thank you. To Clovis's point, the statistics are actually pretty striking. I think ERE put out a article study in 2023, only 9% of expert witness appointments were women, and 4% of appointments were a male-female pair. So the number is really small. So I'm sure my colleagues here have several things to contribute, but I'll put out a few things. Economic consulting tends to be an up or out model. If you don't testify, you don't make partner. And so if you're having a hard time getting that appointment, getting that first appointment, it's more difficult to make partner. But we got a little bit of a chicken and egg situation here. If you're not a partner, it's harder to get the appointment. So we need to find more ways to get those first time appointments for female experts.
I mean, I think some of the challenges start from academia. You know, the industries I work in, from economics and energy, are very male dominated. They're dominated all the way back into the schooling. And so I do see a progression when I look at the associate classes and the diversity that's occurred, you know, increasingly. There's nothing overnight. But I see some progression. But if you ask me where it starts from the root of when the industry truly took off, and it being mostly consistent of men in the disciplines that were available to take advantage of it.
And looking back, and you already touched upon some of these challenges already, such as building a family. What, in your view, are the biggest challenges to establish yourselves as expert witnesses, and in particular as testifying witnesses, going back to Jamie's point?
I think the first thing is just getting your foot in the door, having a seat at the table. As we said, it is a male-dominant industry. It starts even in the colleges. Most of my curriculum in finance and accounting classes were males. So it's no surprise that once you get to economic consulting, there's a lot of males there. The other things I would kind of put into thought process is that in an international arbitration, you are dealing with very large claims, whether you're representing a sovereign government, an international investor. They already have their local counsel. They're hiring counsel in Europe or the US. They want the best of the best already. So that kind of narrows the field down, as Jamie was saying, of having someone who's experienced. They're usually already a partner, but representing and having kind of the best for these large claims. They're not messing around. The other challenges I would say to an international arbitration specifically is that women are not only overcoming any kind of local office or biases that they have in the field, but they're also overcoming biases that may be held by the ultimate client, which is international. So their cultural norms, their thoughts on how women are perceived. So it's kind of a two-facet thing in that part, where it's not just your own, but also the broader region that you're overcoming.
Any other thoughts?
Well, I think in terms of your first testimony, and I do more US-based litigation and arbitration, some international, I think it's to your point, getting your foot in the door, which is hard for males and females, but the males will raise their hands and say, I'm ready, whether they are or not. And we will wait till we are absolutely sure that we are ready and we can do this. I think one thing to change that is having male allies in our firms and for the females to raise their hand, say, I would like to be a testifying expert and get that support around you in the firm. So if a small case comes in, maybe it's a personal injury case, they need an expert. We can put a more junior person on that, a junior female to get that expert report at and to possibly get a deposition or testimony out of that. So I think it's not just a females against the world. We have to figure out how to go forward. We really need our entire firms to support us and we need to raise our hands and say, I want to do it, but have others in the firm to give us those opportunities, because I'm sure in all of our firms, quirky little cases come in that aren't necessarily big fee generators, but it's worth taking them on to get somebody their first testimony experience.
And going back to Tyler's point, do you see any real or perceived bias in how female testimony is received by arbitrators, judges, or juries?
I would say by arbitrators and juries. I mean, juries are kind of a wild card as they are anyway in its own nature. Arbitrators, I feel, are usually very level-headed. I'm also on a task force that does identifying the rise of females arbitrators in proceedings, and we've seen over time that they've been becoming more and more prevalent. I had a colleague just testify last year in front of an all-female arbitration panel, which was wonderful and excellent. So I think that is already kind of in the norm there. The hard part is that, the ultimate client has the final say, and they're not guided by any kind of rules or initiatives. They're the paying person there. But I do think opposing counsel will obviously use whatever they can to their advantage. And if that is to take advantage of some microaggressions, they will. But I think it is recognized across. It's just how it's implemented from there.
I think you both mentioned microaggressions. Do you have any specific examples that you can provide of how that looks like?
Oh, I have one that we discussed on the call where I've been asked in deposition twice, and the first time I just wasn't thinking and caught off guard. Can I call you Julie? And I said, oh, sure. And now I cringe reading that transcript. And the next time someone said, can I call you Julie? I said, no, I prefer Ms. Sates. And he was like, oh, well, she's got some attitude, but I don't know that they would have asked to call a guy by his first name in a deposition. So I think it's things like that. Like I said, billing, I've had, male attorneys where I've done good work, never complained about the fees at the end when the final bill's due. Like, we don't really think you deserve this. And I don't, maybe it's in my head, and maybe that's a female thing to say. I don't think they would do that to a male counterpart. So things like that. And I think probably just looking at our ages, we've been in rooms where we've been asked to get coffee, or someone thought we were the assistant, or, not realizing that we were a senior part of the team.
I'll give you two quick examples. One, I've walked into rooms where I've been asked, who do you work for? I'm a senior partner. I've been testifying for 22 years. I get asked, who am I working for? Two, in a arbitration, I've literally had my personal space invaded as a way to test whether or not I would keep my cool. Of course, at least in this panel, there was one woman who looked at me like, that's insane, you're okay, as I looked, but in personal space. So those are examples. We're human. They're gonna stick in our minds. We're gonna remember those, but we've learned to overcome them because we're resilient, and that's who we are. The real issue to me is the potential of unconscious bias that we can't control. That may exist. I think it is perhaps more on a determination on the margins in terms of clients, of what experts look like and how you present yourself. But those margins matter overall. I think there's a fun statistics from economics, who, as I told you, was very male dominated, where the academia women who believe they faced discrimination went through, and they statistically proved reasonable statistical significance that the men who were doing joint papers got credit and got promoted to professorship, but the women did not. So I would say, when you look, and I see this often in cases where they're opposing me or others, where there's a man who's sitting and saying nothing as a joint on the report, and the woman's not necessarily getting those second opportunities, but the man isn't necessarily earning his weight, from my view. But are we, when we look at the evaluation of experts, considering that person, yeah, they've done that 10 times over. Well, if they didn't say anything, then I'm not sure that, that should be where credit is due. So looking carefully in the consideration of competitiveness to make sure you get the most qualified would help perhaps filter out some of those examples.
You said something very interesting. What does an expert look like? So when we hear that, I think what comes to most people's minds is an older gentleman, a distinguished gentleman. He must know what he's talking about. And to that point, one of my colleagues testified for the first time last summer. So, 2023 or so. What year is this? 2024. So 2024, she's testifying, and she's co-testifying with one of her male colleagues. And the barrister walks up and introduces himself and then turns to her and goes, "Oh, you must be the assistant." We're not in an episode of Mad Men anymore, but this is still happening. So we have to work to change these perceptions for everyone.
And do you have any specific methods you have used to deal with that? Julie shared one. No, call me by.
Yeah, I also think with some of the existing biases out there, you can lean into it a little. So I have testified before female arbitrators, and that's no issue. But the first time, like I said, I was 8 months pregnant. It was a basically a retired law partner who was the arbitrator. He was probably 82 years old, and he was so concerned that I was going to be worn out. And I think it kind of helped a little. And I went back, and my boss at the time said, "You need to wear a pillow every time you testify when this baby's out of you." So I think sometimes you can lean into it. You can be, I'm just the nice accounting lady. I'm not that, professor that knows way more than you, especially with juries, right? Who's basically telling you his opinions because he says so. I'm reasonable. I've done the work. I'm a mom too. I think you can lean into it a little bit depending on the venue. But I think if somebody is disrespecting you, we had this conversation on one of our calls. You don't always have to be super nice. You can say, "No, I'm Ms. Sates." And if they don't like you, they don't like you. That's okay.
That technique also works well in cross-examination. So stepping back at legal professionals, what can the law professionals and the institutions do to promote greater gender balance in expert roles? Any thoughts, ideas?
I had an amazing experience last week. A law firm that we were working with called us up and said that they needed a list of potential arbitrators, and then specifically said, "Please put some women on the list." And it was amazing because at first there was a brainstorm and it was all male names getting put out. And then I said, "Recall that they asked us to put some women on the list." And all of a sudden 15 female names came up. So we're moving in the right direction. I think in arbitrators that are appointed, we're almost at parity. So we're getting there, but these are the things clients can ask of us. When you're recommending experts, please put some females on the list. I think people just need to get a foot in the door, and this is a way to do it.
Yeah, I'd take it one step further and say there's a business case. There's a lot of talent and capability that, if you're going to a prior relationship or somebody who may be known and reputable, that if you cast a wider net, you'll have better decision-making and convince yourself you've made a better process. So, and if it includes women, then that too. What's the harm of adding one more opportunity? I'll tell you, I've been fortunate with every opportunity I've had. I assume the rest of my panelists feel the same. And going the extra mile to make the case is a wonderful opportunity. But the more pitches I get, the more I get retained. I'm going to give the best strategy for what your case is. You get that free. And even if you decide to let somebody else take that idea, that's perfectly fine. But it's a business case from my perspective when there's a deeper, talented, diverse bench who may have different skill sets. It's on us to be able to communicate those skill sets differently of how we can communicate, whether it's the audience, subject matter, et cetera. But I think there's a strong business case.
So let's look at this from a more controversial perspective. Any thoughts on whether that emphasis on gender balance could create its own form of bias, leading to the selection of experts based on gender rather than who is the most qualified?
I don't think that anyone's asking for that. I think everyone's asking for a shot to be considered. That's all any woman I know has ever wanted. It's be considered for the opportunity. That's it.
And I think by the time male or female, you get to the role where you would be a testifying expert, you have written the reports, you have done the analysis, you know what you're doing before you're even placed into that pool. So if we ever get there, it's going to be in 50 years where we're just pulling the less qualified female experts. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. I think you're still going to have to go pitch to a client and show that you know your stuff, show what the strategy is, show what kind of team you have behind you. And they're going to have to evaluate your personality and how you would come across to the finder of fact. So I don't necessarily see that happening.
And Julie, you mentioned earlier mentorship as a key element in balancing the field. How can we ensure precisely that the women in the field get the mentorship they need to succeed? And that can be viewed from the experienced expert perspective, as well as from the young and younger experts in the room. So I welcome others' views.
As Julie said, there's a business case for this. There's amazing economists, scientists, mathematicians out there, and they all want growth opportunities. And this is how we retain our best employees. We have to give them growth opportunities. And the best way to do that is for those people to look around and see role models and have mentors to lift them up. I think my company has a great mentorship program, both formally and informally. My mentors find me opportunities. They give me great feedback, real-time feedback. They tell me what I'm doing well, and most importantly, what I'm not doing well and what I need to do to improve. And these are things that firms need to build in. I think probably historically, the informal mentorship role was probably tougher for women. If you're looking up and you're only seeing men above you, it's probably harder for those women to go and say, hey, can you help me with this? You're really good at this and I need some work in this area. But I think now that is becoming more open, but I think we need to encourage both potential mentors to reach out to those women, as well as women to be aggressive and to reach out to those potential mentors.
And I would agree, having mentorship at every level. So it's not just only focused on the testifying expert, but the ones that are starting off, right? They don't know exactly where they may land. But if they are feeling unsure at this point or this life cycle part or not, it needs to kind of trickle down from the top. So I feel like I've been very blessed with a wonderful mentor, similarly, who's given me real-time feedback, but also it's been tough and saying, this is what I expect of you. This is what was expected of me. These are some of the challenges you may face. And so when I take that and I mentor some of the younger women in my office as well, that trickles down. But it's all part of just breaking the barrier, bringing the way, and just kind of making a normalized thing where we don't have to have as much of these discussions of men versus female in these, it's just kind of a commonality at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add, I agree, all of the sentiment. The needs are different where they are, making sure that the associate women know there is a path if they want it. giving the unique what I'll call a marathon path to capable women. It's ongoing discussions with, my view is leadership. And I think it's incumbent upon women, particularly in the middle, to look to see if they're at a place that will allow them to rise to the level that they seek to, and to do it as well. No places are the same coming from the male development. You can look out and see if women are in leadership roles at the consulting firms. That says a lot. If they're not, then there may be other harder paths, but trying to find the right fit. It's not exclusively seeing women. Men have been helpful to me as well. But you have to be very mindful of your circumstance to achieve, and to have numerous different people to reach out to are helpful outside of the firm, because there are conversations you don't want to have in the firm, truthfully, but also having people within the firm you can reach out to.
I would just add one thing. I had very few female expert role models. I mean, I can think of a handful when I was a young consultant. And the males I worked for were extremely supportive and great role models. And the person that I still work with, I said, I want to be that guy someday, right out of undergrad. But I think what else has helped me is I've had peers, female peers, who wanted to move into the expert role. And we kind of helped each other. And then somebody who came a few years after us. So we would joke, it was all the females really running the intellectual property groups that we were in. But having those peers, we kind of mentored each other. And if we had a question about how to deal with something, we could go to each other, because there's certain questions, certain things come up. You can't ask a male, they might not relate to it at all. And so I think also finding your peers that can help you. Now, I think for younger women, there's a lot of us. I would imagine everyone on this panel would be happy to mentor somebody within our firms, because we didn't necessarily have that. But also looking for your peers who are kind of on the same path and figuring out the answers to some questions you may have.
So in addition to your support network within your firms, can you speak to your support network more broadly in terms of family, and how balancing work and life has been a challenge or an opportunity for growth?
I mean, I can say, I think if you had two full-time working professionals raising kids, it would be extremely hard. I have 3 children ranging from 10 years old to 19 years old, but I had a stay-at-home husband. And so if I had to travel, I didn't worry about it. So in the beginning, we kind of flexed with a nanny, and I was home one day, he was home one day. So, I think in the 80s when I was growing up, they said, women can have it all. You can't have it all and feel like you're getting it all right. Like either work is getting 110% and family's not, or it flips. So I think you absolutely have to have a strong network, whether it's nanny, daycare, family around. We didn't have family around either. So the fact that my husband was more interested in raising kids, which I was not. I love my kids, but I was not interested in being home with them, was a huge help to me. Because I just never had to worry about it. I had to go, to trial somewhere. I had to be in a deposition when we had to do these things outside of our home. It wasn't an issue. I never had to worry about the kids. It's hard. There's still things. I heard it's called the invisible load that only moms do. Like, what do we need to buy? Who needs this form signed for school? What doctor's appointments need to be booked? He still doesn't do that. Just because I think we take that on. So that's harder, but to me, that's just life. But I think you absolutely have to have a strong support system, or you can't do it.
Jamie, you mentioned that having 4 kids makes you an excellent manager. Can you speak to that?
Well, I'll give you an example. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was helping an expert prep, and the lawyers are on the phone, the whole team's on the phone, and it's, in talking about support network, I have family in the area, and then this morning, I knew I had this call. It was at 7 a.m., that's bus time, and so my mom was around and she was helping. And so younger consultants ask this all the time. How do you do this? How do you do this job with 4 kids? So here's an example of how I do this job with 4 kids. So I get a note, the bus is not coming. So I'm still on the call. I go, put myself on mute, get a kid in here, write on the Post-it note, go to the end of the driveway. Meet the carpool at the end of the driveway. This is par for the course on being a parent with 4 kids and doing this job. So this is all about the multitasking, all the balls in the air. I think when people say you can't multitask, that's totally a lie. You can definitely do it. But you have to write everything down. You have to have your family support network, your friend support network, and you have to have the colleagues who are understanding when you put yourself on mute and you hide your video to get your kid on the bus. I think COVID is actually, there was a lot of bad things about COVID, but there was a lot of great things that came out about COVID. It was a glimpse into what the working woman's life is like. So thank you, COVID. It makes it possible for me to do my job. And I'm also, again, grateful to my colleagues who continue to make it possible for me to do this job.
I would just echo that sentiment. And you were talking, Julie, about 2 working parents. I mean, this morning, my husband flew out at 6 a.m. So I was getting ready with the kids. I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, and it's, it's a balancing act. But as you've said here, Jamie, that COVID really opened the doors. And so having now that flexibility where I do not have to be physically at a desk at a certain time helps me kind of balance the both. And I can push things into the margins as needed or mute myself on a call when one is sick and is at home. It doesn't have to be a full day off. It can be, they're there checking in on them. So I do think that's one of the silver linings of COVID, fortunately or unfortunately, but it's tough. And I think too, as others have said, it's the support network within your own firm. We don't have family close by, but when I had my 2, I had a very understanding boss who said, if you need more time, take it. So my first, I had a reduced workload for a couple of months, and it was immensely helpful. It's probably one of the reasons why it's helped me kind of stay in the field. I was still an asset. I was still working hard, but I needed that kind of boundary because I was the default parent and my husband was working, and we were trying to juggle it as best we could. And then when my second one came around, I took a longer maternity leave because also she needed it and I needed to be there to care for her. Whereas other firms would be like, sorry, you need to be back at the state, otherwise you're out. And so I was very fortunate to have that support system, not from family, but from my work family, and saying, you take the time you need. And we understand that, as you said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And so I've come back, mine are getting older. There's a challenge with every age, but it's a little easier now than when they were little. And I'm really appreciative of having that flexibility on top of the flexibility now with COVID, remote work as needed.
Well, today is my first day at the office after maternity leave, so I can relate to that. So looking at the future, how do you see the role of, let's call it gender balance, gender diversity in the next 5 to 10 years? Is it gender blind? Is it more conscious of diversity, purposeful? What are your thoughts on the future?
So at a high level, I would say our industry are followers and not leaders. I think we have benefited by all of the efforts of having female arbitrators, which trickles down to more outside counsel and more to consulting firms. And so there's progression, continuing, straight line, logarithmic, I don't know, but continued progression.
I'm feeling optimistic. So I loved when I read the statistics about arbitrators. Almost on parity is amazing. Right now, when I look at my colleagues who are at my level, it's about an equal number of men and women who are progressing into that junior expert role. That's really exciting. It wasn't like that 10 years ago. And then in terms of academia, where it all starts, I think more girls are getting into science, they're getting into math. I know I'm a mean mommy and I'm like, you guys are all gonna do well in math because you're girls and girls are so good at math. So we have to keep finding ways to encouraging these young women to get into these fields. So I'm hopeful.
I also feel optimistic. Having conversations like this, bringing awareness to it, I'm hopeful that we'll get to a point where we don't even have to think about, should we put forth a male or a female counterpart to a male? I think it'll just be kind of a more of an even playing field. I do think we still have some ways to go, but with the mentorship that we have, and I've seen from also other firms, I think we're on the right path to, where this almost becomes a moot point at some point.
Well, I'm not hopeful. No, I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful. I've been on teams now with, female, all female outside counsel. The teams are largely female. The support people are males.
Was that with Covington?
Yes. Maybe. But I think it's more fun personally. It's never as fun to just be the only female on a team, but I am very hopeful. And there's still these things where there's an opportunity. Well, they have a female expert on the other side. We need another female. In terms of, are we getting there in the different disciplines in accounting and general, forensic consulting? We're at 50-50 in hiring and basically up to manager level. At the partner level, we're still, in my firm, only 18%. So we have a long way to go. We were 10% 5 years ago, so I guess we're moving in the right direction. But I think the more attorneys we see that are female, the better it's getting for us in the expert roles.
And one final thought, and to conclude, what advice would you give your younger self?
I would probably say, don't be so nice. I think as women, we're rewarded for being nice and being pleasant. And I was always willing to take the notes and be the person to organize the happy hour. And we need to share that responsibility. I think being more aggressive, knowing what you want and going after it and asking for it, you deserve it. Work hard, you deserve it.
Worry less.
I don't know, Jamie, I think you hit the nail on the head there. So yeah, just be more aggressive, but also don't beat yourself up on the smallest things. People are not going to remember it a year from now, and they certainly will not remember it 10 years from now when you're testifying on another random thing. So
You're being recorded.
yes. Give yourself grace. So.
I mean, I agree with what all of the panelists had to say. Also, it's not brain surgery what we're doing here. I mean, this goes for men and women. Nobody's going to die if you get a number wrong. Just don't take yourself too seriously. There will be more opportunities. It is a marathon. But, yeah, and don't be so nice. You don't have to be so nice.
Well, and with that, I'll open up the floor for questions. Shireen.
Yeah, thank you all so much. It's been a really interesting discussion. Just a quick point on parallels between the issues that arise with respect to arbitrator appointments and increasing greater gender balance with arbitrators. One of the primary vehicles for progress in increasing gender diversity has been the role of institutions, arbitral institutions, and kind of disregarding formal requirements in a very formalistic sense, and kind of viewing experience and opportunity in a wider, from a wider lens. So allowing for different types of experience to be evidence of kind of qualifying traits and just the different types of experience, allowing for people to be appointed to arbitrators that might not have gotten those opportunities otherwise. Where you don't have that for expert witnesses, if you have a figure like 9%, what do you view as being kind of the vehicle to propel us forward in terms of increasing these numbers? And what kind of tangible advice would you give to counsel specifically as to how we should be conducting ourselves in order to make some progress in this field?
So what you raised is why I said we are the followers and not the leaders, right? So it alone raises attention and consideration, which hopefully would spur into the business case, which includes interviewing to offer a wider array of opportunities for a client to consider. And in that, I think truly looking very carefully, as I said, some of the metrics of what somebody puts down as credentials to test it, to make sure you're fulsome on what the capabilities are and who can fit, and picking the best fit from there. It's not an overnight because of where we are. I mean, that's just the reality. But I think there are plenty of times where more opportunities for considering female experts might lead to more opportunities for raising the game. My world's very specialized. There's different set of credentials in the energy, in the economics. Where numbers fall where they are. You could look at the more generic industries and say, why isn't that a jump ball? Why isn't it 50-50? In those cases, that requires some inspection, but if there is, specialty skills I use as a differentiator to help me, but they also are limiting in some ways. But the question is, if there's a generic industry, and why wouldn't it be 50-50 shot either way for those who work in those? That's one additional thought for how you look at it, how you evaluate it, but mostly I think just interviewing more, and chips fall where they may, and the best person should win from there.
So I would say I am in a somewhat generic industry. I have an accounting background, and I'm a CPA. So I think there needs to be programs within the firms to identify at an early point in the career women who are on that testifying path. Part of it, I think, comes from that. Like I said, we have 18% females at the partnership level. So if you have 18% females at the partnership level and not all of them want to testify, you're going to have a lower number. So it's getting women to greater partnership parity within the firms, and also really identifying those who want to testify and mentoring those at an early age and showing them you can do this. Because I think some young women see male testifying experts on the road all the time, don't have a life. Maybe they don't have a female role model, think, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't know how I can have kids and manage this or have a family or whatever they want to do. So I think the firms have to help with that to get a greater pool to begin with.
Any other questions? Marnie?
Thanks so much. Really interesting conversation. So from the law, I'm Marnie Covington. From the law firm side, gender diversity and racial and ethnic diversity more generally has in some cases been client-driven, because our clients are asking us to put forward diverse teams, and therefore we're being responsive. I was curious at your consulting firms whether law firms actually are asking your firms to put forward diverse teams, and if you don't know, how do you think your institutions would react if a law firm was saying, we're also looking for diversity on the team? When they
I've seen it, but more often I've seen the opposite, where there's a group of men in town going to make the rounds to law firms, and they're meeting with female partners. And I'm like, guys, have you thought about maybe bringing a couple women with you? So I have seen the ask, but it's not a universal ask for diverse teams necessarily. And I think that this is a whole other panel we can have on business development strategies, women versus men, right? I think they're just not thinking about it sometimes when they're going out to push our services.
Right. So I'm not familiar with asks in that way from the lane I'm in. What you identified is, as a consulting firm concern. And it really, as the rising women looking to firms that have leadership with women in executive level, I think differentiate. Again, it's not overall, but it's got to come, it's got to be both ways. It's got to come from the consulting sphere as well.
I would say I haven't been directly involved in these conversations, but I believe there was one, at least in our firm, but it was from an all-female team of lawyers. They're asking for a more diverse group of experts. And so I think that is beneficial, but it's still just a very small piece, right? They were thinking of it, but others may not. So I think it is something that is evolving, and I think it's something that may happen more often, but again, it still needs a little bit more of a push, and not just from the ones that are female themselves. So we'll see.
I think that's right. I don't know if it's something that clients are specifically asking for yet. I hope that it's one of the asks in the future. I do know that our firm is being proactive about this. For example, our head recruiter called me up and said, hey, what business organizations do you know that women attend? Where do you think we can find more women in the economics field? So I think the business need is coming, and people are trying to be proactive about it. So I do hope that more law firms start directly asking for this diverse panel. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Sanjana Kager, really amazing panel. I was wondering what your thoughts are on going to organization. I guess the worry is like, and I've seen this as well with experts at my company, where we'll often have there's one woman that's an expert on the case, and the man testifies, or having a woman show that we're a diverse team, but where's the balance between including women and kind of making that happen for women, but also going to organizations oh, we have women, we're diverse.
I guess that's a hard question. I personally have never felt like a token. I feel like I'm there because I deserve to be there. This is not an easy field to be a token in. And I think you mentioned this earlier, to get through the academics that you need to get through, and to get through the professional work, and then similarly to balance all of that women have to balance. I don't think any woman gets to that table as a token. And I don't think
Maybe the question is,
I
why
know.
aren't you testifying, right? I think if you change the question a little bit, I'm not trying to misinterpret, but is a woman on the team counting as much as an interview for a woman as a testifier? The answer is no. Yes, it counts in the development and the support overall, but the conversation that needs to be occurring at that higher level is, are you interviewing to ensure that the business case of ensuring the most talent is for the expert first is also being attended to?
Thank you. Any other questions?
My question is a bit more about mentorship you described, crucial role in mentorship. I'm just wondering, what do you look for in a mentor, and how to sort of nurture that relationship at the different phases of the career?
For me, it was just a personality fit, and I have one person in mind. He's male, and like I said, I wanted to be that guy. And I think when there's programs in law firms and consulting firms where you're assigned a mentor, that kind of doesn't work. I've been assigned a mentor, and I'm trying my best with people, but you have to seek out your mentor, and you have to make sure they're willing to mentor you, but you have to raise your hand and say, hey, I'm dealing with this issue. Have you ever dealt with it? How do you think I should approach it? So I think that's what's given me the most success. And even when I was at different firms, I would call this person and say, I'm not sure about this damage issue. Am I approaching it the right way? Or I'm not sure about, I see this case out there and I want to go get it. How would you go about that? So I think it's a lot on the mentee to ask for what you need. And once you find that person, they're going to be happy to help you. So that's how I've always approached it. I do think formalized programs are an important tool, especially if somebody doesn't have the personality to go out and seek help. But I think the best mentors it doesn't necessarily matter what their gender is, but it has to be a willing give and take relationship. And you as a mentee have to ask for what you need.
Any other questions? Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for this fascinating discussion. Any final thoughts?
I was just going to have another little quip on the mentorship. So, I mean, I find it very beneficial to have a female mentor. And so we are both friends, but then we also have a very strict working relationship too. I look up to her because she has pushed those barriers. And I think that it's great to have these examples, right? But we can kind of turn it on or off, whether we're talking about daily life, family life, or having a question on evaluation piece, right? Like, how should we approach this? How should we approach that? She's also a good person to kind of push me out of my comfort zone. So I think it's these things where it has to be a relationship where you recognize each other's strengths and maybe not weaknesses, but areas of development and how that kind of works for you. I don't think I could have the same quite relationship with a male mentor. Nothing against any of the males that I've worked with, but for the points in my life, I think it's been very beneficial of having a female mentor. And I think that's something too, as the field continues to grow, this will have more of an impact for others out there. So, you know, I'm looking forward to how it kind of develops throughout.
Well, thank you for joining and for a wonderful discussion. I look forward to continuing this conversation at some other point. And with that, I close the session